Think a massive pipeline guarantees sales success? Think again. My guest today, Matt Carey, a global head of sales at FIS, is here to bust that myth wide open. It's not about having a big pipeline. It's about having the right type of pipeline. And from there, let's talk a little bit about losing, because with a 25% win rate, sales teams spend 75% of their time losing. So Matt believes if you're not learning from it, you're wasting an opportunity. Matt Carey also believes in constant growth, constant goal setting, and investing in yourself, a philosophy he lived by his entire career. Oh, and he's got some serious love for what Joe Mazzulla is building with the Celtics, which I also respect. So love that. The episode's packed with insights. Join the conversation on LinkedIn, drop your biggest takeaway, and make sure to subscribe to the Coach2Scale YouTube channel for more straight shooting leadership lessons. Let's go.
Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Buffett famously said, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. Anything that improves your own talents. Nobody can tax it or take it away from you. I've known today's guest for almost 20 years, and one thing that impressed me right off the bat was that he invested a significant amount of money out of his own pocket to help him achieve the success that he desired in his career. And you know what? He's achieved a great amount of success along the way, building and leading teams at great companies, Oracle, SAP, and currently he's an SVP of Global Sales at FIS, Matt Carey. Oh, by the way, and the self-proclaimed middle of the pack marathon runner, although he's ahead of that middle of the pack, ahead of me in that middle. Matt Carey, welcome to Coach2Scale.
I appreciate it, Matt. Look, thankful to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Speaking of, middle of I love the marathon stuff, right? Little thing we have.
I'll tell you quickly where that came from. So I had a peer of mine in my last company, and on his LinkedIn profile, the top of the LinkedIn profile, kind of how I do now as well, he had Paris marathon run at 2:42. So I put in
jackass.
I put in middle of the pack marathon run.
Yeah. Yeah. My line is, I've run in Boston marathons. I'm the only guy at the marathon starting line that couldn't touch his toes. Yeah. All right. We'll get into it. Really looking forward to the conversation. We've had a bunch of great conversations over the years, and this one we're just going to share with a few more people. So Matt, let's start off with the Mythbuster question. I ask all of our guests, there's a lot of myths out there in sales leadership. What's one of those myths that you hear time and time again that you believe little maybe misguided or maybe even complete BS?
I mean, it's, I'll talk a little bit on both sides of my mouth here for a second, right? So one of my sayings I have is pipeline cures all and time kills all, right? However, it's the right type of pipeline that really matters, right? And when you look at it, people talk about, all we need is more pipeline. All we need is more pipeline. It's the right type, right? And when you look at it, do you have just a big deal in there that's going to offset it, right? What's the aging of the pipeline? Right? You go through, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. There's deals that I see in the pipeline over 5 years old. Those aren't real deals.
They have ZZ Top beards by the, birthdays, multiple
the
birthdays.
Term we used to use for that, I think, but they're not real. Let's put it that way. So to me, it's a matter of making sure that it's not just that pipeline cures all. It's the right type of pipeline cures all, right? It's like taking medicine, right? You can say, hey, medicine cures all, that's sure. But if you're taking the wrong medicine for the ailment, you're not helping yourself, right? So that to me is probably one of the biggest myths overall of sales and sales management, is making sure that you're true to yourself and you really know, is this a real deal? Is this not a real deal? And do I really have the pipeline coverage that I need? And I guess with that too, I'd add, when you're looking at it, it's not just the overarching number. I think we talked about this before. But if you look at it, good SaaS business, let's say it's a 25% win rate, right? So every 75% of the deals you lose it, right? So if you look at that, what should my pipeline coverage be if that's my anticipated win rate. And then you can look at, if you sell multiple products, well, what's my product ratio too? Like I might have some products that I only need a 2x pipeline coverage for, right? I might have some products though that I need a 6x pipeline coverage for. So if you're looking at it and my pipeline's only made up of the products that I need a 6x coverage for, but only have 4x coverage, well, we could just say, hey, your 4x coverage, that's great, but not really, because you really need a 6x coverage with this specific product set, right? So it's really digging in and looking at it all, I guess.
Yeah. So the right type of pipeline. I mean, the problem is, like the gene pool, CRM has no lifeguard. I mean, you can put anything in there. It's like, yeah, we need 10x pipe by Friday.
Correct.
Well,
You'll get it.
Here's 12. Here's 12x.
Hey,
how about 12? I'm the best. 12x.
If you don't get to 4x pipeline by next week, I guarantee you'll have 4x pipeline next week, right?
When I first started in tech sales, in management, senior leader at the time said, we need whatever X, 4X, let's call it 5X. I think it was 5X. We need 5X pipeline. Okay. And we need it by Friday. And then a couple of months later, the pipeline didn't shake out. It was like collecting, birthdays in there and pig in a python, just like getting kicked down the road. And so we need to clean up the pipeline. And so it was right around the time when Mike Myers came in, when we did the initial sales training pilot with Sandler, and we learned like how to negative reverse. We learned how to like no's okay. We want to get no, and then, the clean pipeline will set you free. You don't have clutter. And, I showed up, I think I was a newly minted director.
Yeah.
And, second line leader. And I showed up for the forecast call, and Benelli, what happened to your pipeline? Oh, the bad news is it went down, but the good news is it's really clean. Yeah, but it went down by like 70%. Yeah, but it's really, really clean this time. So get through the call somehow, get summoned a little bit later. Find out where that pipeline went and put it back in. I don't want to tell you to put crap in there, but somehow that pipeline needs to go up. I'm sure you heard crazy things back in the day. In fact, I might have even been the one communicating them.
Thankfully, I think we've gone away from that for the most part, right? Most companies, I think, recognize like pipeline cleanliness is a regular cadence, right? We use, kind of stole it from our old days. We call it Target Tuesdays, and Target Tuesday for us isn't just about, it's a dedicated day of prospecting, pipeline generation. But the whole concept is that there's a weekly cadence that goes into it, right? So you have a Monday, you got to prep for it. Tuesday, you got to prospect. Wednesday, you got to review with your manager. Thursday, we're going to look at reporting stats and everything. But a part of that is that like hygiene of, okay, I'm not only prospecting all day Tuesday, but I'm going through my entire pipeline, everything. I don't care if it's in 2026 right now, right? You're looking at everything in the pipeline just to make sure, am I really progressing it week in and week out, that I know that it's real, right?
Yeah. And you talked about the win rate, the assumption that, say, there's a 25% win rate, which means you're losing 75% of the deals. And I know you spent a lot of time on this over the years and believe that you can learn from losing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what can we learn from losing?
Yeah, a ton, man. I mean, it's also, right, it's not about sales process, right? I think too often times, as sales leaders, especially, when you're closer to the front line, the closer you're on the front line, all you're really caring about is this. Did I lose it because of sales, right? Was it the sales process? What happened? But oftentimes when you look in those loss reports, it gets back to, we were talking about being market obsessed, right? Like understanding the industry, understanding the market. The losses are there to help us understand, obviously why we're winning, but why are we losing? But why we're losing isn't always just a sales process thing. Sometimes it is, don't get me wrong, right? Demos that are prepared, not customized, not prepping the team before they come in, not getting to the right executive alignment, all that stuff is part of it. But what I also want to understand is, why did someone not choose us? Was there a product misalignment? Meaning, was there a messaging misalignment there that we can correct, right? Was our pricing misaligned? I don't mean we're too expensive or not, but were we not aligning our pricing with their objectives? Right? Were we trying to sell something that maybe wasn't the right fit, or maybe we had something else that we should have positioned, right? So more times than not, when you go through those loss reports, this thing the product team can take out of them, by the way,
Yeah.
That's why Gong is phenomenal for that stuff, right? And the product team should be using Gong and listening to recordings and getting feedback from that too. But it's also the marketing and the messaging that we need to continuously fine tune to make sure that we know and everyone knows in the organization, no matter where they reside. I don't care if you're down in Singapore, you're in London, you're in New York, you need to understand what is that message that we need to be leveraging to make sure that we're ahead of the competition, especially as they're continuously reiterating their messaging and throwing us curveballs.
And so is that, I've heard you say before, a time of forced self-reflection,
Yeah.
right? That, they're carving out that time, they go in, hey, why did we lose? What can we do better? What did we do well? Right? Just taking the time to do that.
Yeah, it's part of it, right? And part of that's that Target Tuesday too, right? So you have the analysis and the reflection part of like, okay, what are we winning? Where are we losing? Right. And that's sort of looking at the collective data too, right? So you could look at the win-loss reports and you can look at specific deals, right? That helps. But then look at the culmination of that all. And when you look at everything together, you can say, well, are we losing from a product messaging standpoint? Right? Are we losing because we're not getting executive alignment? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we losing because we're not customizing the demos in the right way? And you start to see trends, right? There's always one-offs, right? You lose a deal because of this or that. Right? That's not that. But when you start seeing it time and time again, now you have a trend. And that's that time of self-reflection, as you say, to look back and say, okay, what do we need to do as an organization to help with that messaging too? And you learn a lot from those losses, frankly, more so than you do from the wins, right? The wins, you can help yourself on the back and isn't that great, right? But those losses really help paint the full picture. Product, marketing, sales.
Yeah. I mean, the wins could be, hey, they own a bunch of this stuff and they're buying more of it because they grew a little bit. Like,
yeah, we get spin outs a lot, right? A company spins out another company, they need to stand up the same system. Okay, that's great. We won that because we won the first deal though, not that deal. Right.
Well, you didn't lose it, which is good. So let's talk about hiring for a second. We've known each other for a long time. So, 20 years ago versus now, and any changes, in terms of what you're looking for in the hiring process for, whether it be, individual contributors or who you're hiring leaders.
Yeah.
Like, what are the differences in the hiring process, if any, over the years?
Yeah, I don't know if there frankly is, Matt, right? I mean, it's, I stole this from someone. I forget the guy's name. So, fire, desire, and aptitude, right? So, that's really what I look at that high level, right? Do the burning basic fire and desire to want to succeed in this role. We're not pushing paper, right? We're selling into, what I do, we're selling into the office of the CFO suite, right? We're having conversations with CFOs, treasurers on a regular basis. You need to understand the business. You need to have a high level of business acumen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, what I look for is a history of winning. We used to talk about this, back in our old days, and I'd have managers that would come up to me and say, oh, I'm looking for the athletes, right? They had to play sports in college and this and that. I'd say to them, you realize like you never hired me with that profile, right? So you have to look.
But you tutored athletes in college.
I did tutor some athletes.
You didn't. You tutored Ray Lewis. If I heard the story.
I did.
Up in Ray Lewis tutored. All right. I would pay to be a fly on the wall in that conversation.
Good guys. I mean, Ray, they've been awarded pretty well for themselves. I don't think I can take too much credit for that. But, when you look at it overall, I want to see like that history of success, right? Not just I jumped from here and I jumped from there and I jumped from here, but like, what was your percentage of quota? Did you make your numbers, right? What was your attainment, for different metrics that you had, different KPIs, right? Especially as you move up to leadership roles. Because people that win, winners win, right? If you have a history of success, you're going to continue to have that history of success.
Past performance is no guarantee of future results, but it's the best gauge we have.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Tell me what you did.
Yeah. I remember a training that a lot of years ago, it was called Selecting Winners. And that was the gist of it. I mean, it was just great class on hiring.
Yeah, same. And I took a lot from that and I still hold to that. Right. And when I go through someone's background, I start from the end and I work the way up. Right. I want to know how they did at that job. What was their decision making? If someone has blips on the resume, then frankly, I hope they do it at a certain stage of their career, right? We all make mistakes somewhere along the line. I want them to acknowledge that and recognize that and talk about what they learned from that, right? And this shows a good introspection, I find, that someone can remove themselves from the situation to think about it from a business perspective, not a personal perspective. Especially that's what we need.
I see I've seen this go a couple different ways, right? So let's use the scenario, Matt, where somebody, has had a history of great runs, 5 years here, 7 years, 6 years, like great runs. Then all of a sudden, like 6 months.
Yeah.
And I've seen people omit that from their resume. They don't even put it on there. And then, obviously people put it on there and, they struggle to, they feel like awkward about talking through that. What's your perspective on that? I mean, I know that you don't encourage omitting it.
Yeah, I definitely don't know.
Right. But what's an example of like things you're listening for when someone walks through like a 6-month stint? And what's an example of something you've probably heard, but you don't want to hear? Like it's a red flag.
Yeah, I don't want to hear negativity. Right. I don't want to hear negativity.
The boss sucked.
Yeah.
That the product sucked, that type of thing.
I don't want that. No, it might be a product market fit that you did do your due diligence on, right? And that's fair. But I want to understand, did you think about it from a business perspective and did you learn something from it? I don't want the personal, emotional aspect of it. My boss sucked, this, that sucks. That's an instant red flag for me. I want an analysis of, I didn't do my due diligence as an example, or the due diligence I did misled me to believe this. And when I got in there and I did my analysis on the market and the industry, we actually only had a TAM of this. And therefore I wasn't able to have a good fit and didn't see a future growth opportunity for the marketplace based upon where we needed to get from a budget attainment standpoint to have a successful exit, whatever the case might be. Right. So I want some thought process with that. No, it might be, hey, I came in and I was supposed to have, maybe at a frontline, I was supposed to have the California West region and I live in LA. And they said right away, I need you to move your phone family to New York and we're going to change it. Well, that's a different story too. And that's fine on the personal side. Right. But, it needs to be a business acumen discussion, not a person.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. And so, as you've moved and evolved from a frontline leader to a senior leader, what have you noticed about the differences between the two? Between, the skills and things that a frontline manager has to worry about versus, a senior leader, an SVP, and someone in a position like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's definitely differences. I mean, one of the big things, I talked about this with my team recently, actually. The higher up you get, you're always selling, right? So don't ever forget that. You're always selling. The difference is I sell internally a lot, right? A lot, right? So working on budgets, working on quotas, right? Working on those types of things. Product, what do I need to get from product support? What do I need to get from marketing support? I'm always advocating for my team and I'm always selling what we need to do to get the resources we need to be successful, right? Positioning the team and those types of things. So obviously you're not doing as much of that at the front line, right? Front line is you're looking at the pipe, you're working with your reps, you're helping them grow and expand and the coaching and all that. But the coaching doesn't stop, right? You still have your one-on-ones every week and you still do all those basics, I think, regardless of the level you are at the company. But you also, from my perspective, is much more about, I need to understand what's happening in the industry and the world and be able to sit down when I get called into an executive meeting and I'm meeting with a CFO of a Fortune 1000 company. I need to know what they're concerned about, right? And they're looking to me as an expert in this space. And I need to be able to talk to them about, what is the impact with, tariffs coming up, right? And how do we see that impacting some of similar companies in a similar industry, right? What are the pain points that a utility is facing versus a manufacturing company, right? And they're looking for me for that guidance based on the fact that we talk to a lot of companies, right? So you really need to be an expert in your space, you need to be an expert in the industries, and you need to be a business person, much more so than a tactical salesperson.
Yeah, I think about a lot of the machinations, going through like for a SWOT analysis, and I think over the years, and what I always remember is the real transactional leaders, like people just worried about deals. At even at the senior level, it would always be, the SWOT would always be really transactional.
Yes.
The people who thought more high level, more strategically, really put time into thinking about, the strengths and weaknesses, but also the external opportunities and threats. Where can we find, where can we take share? Where can we eat our competition's lunch? Where are we, where's our six vulnerable, type of thing. But, and I guess it leads to a question, when you're looking, when you're speaking with frontline leaders and you're evaluating them and observing them, what are the things that they're doing? What's an example of something that a frontline leader is doing that impresses you and makes you think this person could be wired for something bigger down the road?
Not being a super rep. So it's more
Tell me
about
more.
not doing what they are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to enable your team, right? And enabling your team is not doing that job, right? A super rep, you see so many times from new managers, where they come in and they were probably one of the best reps before. That's why they got promoted. But that doesn't mean that you need to go in and run the deals for your team. You need to enable and empower them and give them the resources and the air cover, whatever you want to look at it, to have them go out and grow and learn, right? No senior rep wants to have a manager run deals for them, right? They want to be the quarterback. They want to be the lead point. And then you pull in your resources where needed, of course. I'm not saying you don't get into the deals. We all get into the deals at any level, CBO down, right? But there's a difference between supporting your team and running it for your team, right? The managers rather, that do the best job, understand that they're there to support that team and know where they are in the sales cycle. Because sometimes, frankly, let's be true, right? Sometimes we need to play a level down for where we are, right? Sometimes that manager has to become the rep. You have a brand new rep on the account, whatever the case might be, you have to play that role. But now that means your VP is now the manager and your SVP is now your VP, right? Everything needs to shift down a level so you get proper alignment with the account too.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when you're on a call with a rep, let's say, I heard the phrase, save the deal, not the rep. If the rep's just struggling to get through it, let them struggle.
Yeah.
That's okay. If it's putting the relationship at risk or the deal, then you may have to jump in and do something a little
course.
bit.
But there's a big difference between that supporting the rep, right, versus being a super rep. A super rep is doing that all the time for all of their deals. You need to be selective. And of course, if there's big, large rocks that we need to move, or relationship challenges that we need to get, different alignments, that's strategy. The big difference between being a strategic manager and that super rep, as I call it.
I interviewed somebody yesterday, and they're telling a story about understanding. They were talking to a CEO and trying to understand what the go-to-market strategy was, or the success strategy. And the CEO was like, "Yeah, I just I have 7 reps around the country, and what they're chartered with is going and bringing all the deals to me." Right? It's like,
we call those BD.
Wait, that's your strategy.
Exactly.
As a CEO, the founder, like, talk, not scalable, right?
Yeah.
So one of the other topics I want to hit on, I hear a lot of folks come on the show here and talk about, let's say a gap in their resume that they want to fill is running a global team. They might be, head of sales in the US, head of go-to-market in the US, might even be a little bit North America, but like to run a truly global team. What are the differences that you've seen in terms of running let's say a US based team and running a more global team?
Yeah, I mean,
other than the time zones.
Yeah, the obvious I was going to say is the time zones. Get used to the early mornings and late nights. There's cultural differences that you have to be aware of, right? And it's not as drastic as people tend to fear, right? Because most people that are in sales and international environments, they're accustomed to working in a global company, right? Especially out of Asia. But you have to take the lead of your in-country team, right? So the internal stuff, frankly, there's no difference, right? You got to do your forecast, you got to do all that stuff. No differences whatsoever. But when you're out there in country, you need to understand the cultural mores and the values, right? How they operate. Right? You go to a meeting in Japan. First of all, I had to wear a tie for the first time in like 8 years, last time I was there, right? But you need to know basics like you don't sit down first, right? Everyone stands before they go. When someone speaks, someone addresses the question, and then you have a nice, lovely pregnant pause for 30 seconds or a minute before someone else speaks again, right? So there's certain things that you need to just understand before you go in, get debriefed, know what the cultural expectations are, right? If there's a translator in the room too, that adds a level of complexity, right? You have to have that person speak and translate, make sure that everything's clearly understood. But more times than not, it's the internal stuff. It's fine. It's the external, just making sure that you're aligning and not insulting anyone.
Yeah. I remember doing a training for a global company in Sao Paulo, Brazil, through a translator. It's for 2 days.
Yeah.
I would speak to the translator, and everybody had the headsets on, and somehow we missed this, because I think everybody kind of spoke English, but at the last minute they wanted to really get more out of it, so they wanted it in their own language. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be the longest 2 days of my life. But it actually went really well once you got used to it.
Yeah, get it.
It actually, to me, it slowed me down, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I've never been to Japan.
That's also important. You need to make sure that we have messaging that resonates within the regions too, right? So,
What's an example of that?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit before about making sure product messaging and marketing messaging and all that. And there is collaboration and there are some commonalities across, but there's nuances oftentimes with the solutions you sell and what's working well and what the message that resonates within those regions. Well, I'll give a good example, actually. Just using Japan as the example. We have a solution we sell. It's a receivable solution, right? Helps people with DSO, days of sales outstanding, reducing the DSO. Let's say you're running at 60, we can reduce it down to, 50, 45, whatever it might be. Well, in Japan, they don't sell it. Know why? Everyone pays their bills on time.
Everyone pays their bill. Yeah.
Right.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? Yeah.
So are we going to go into that market and really push our receivables product and market that and spend resources on that and put reps in that region to sell a receivables product when everyone pays their bills on time? Probably not.
You can educate the marketplace that you don't have to.
Exactly.
You just, wait 60 days.
Yeah.
So a guest on the show told, I thought it was a funny story, a horror show story about etiquette in Japan. And, obviously the culture is more formal, as you described. Well, this person who told the story talks about how he was on a sales call there, and he brought the big boss, and the big boss shows up from Texas.
Yeah.
And, everybody's sitting around the table, and while he was brief that, business cards mean something, and how you handle the business card means something, and how you put them on the table and go around the room. And so anyway, the guy from Texas, we're gonna not do all that formal stuff. We're gonna, what we do in Texas, we're informal. We're just gonna get to know each other, and everybody's coming up still and giving him the business card. He takes all the business cards, stacks them up, and sticks them in his back pocket. Ooh. They go out to dinner that night, and the guy telling the story is like, wait, there's more. They go out to dinner that night, and whatever they're eating, all of a sudden the guy reaches back in the pocket, grabs one of the business cards, and starts picking his teeth.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. What I love the train wreck stories.
No, it's tough, and even just the bowing and all that. They don't care that much about that stuff, quite frankly, right? They know we're Westerners, and we're not going to get all of that down. But it's the attempt, right? It's knowing the greetings, the hellos, the thank yous, the goodbyes, right? Making an effort to use
making an effort
the local language.
Yeah. Making an effort. So Matt, one of the things I teased up front was the whole concept of investing in your own development. And, I said this to you when we saw each other in person last, that one of the things I did remember and respect was that at a younger, not young, but younger age, earlier in your career, you took money out of your pocket, real money, not, chump change, and you invested it in a coach. I even think I remember his name. Was his name Brian?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know how I remember that.
Yeah.
But so, and I see and observe so many people who, I want a coach. Oh, well, why don't you have one? Well, the company doesn't pay for it.
Yeah.
Get it? Okay, but you can invest in yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, just what do you recall? What prompted you to do that? And when you look back on it, was it something that you'd recommend to people?
I'll answer the latter first. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's even this week I was, we were down to my company's headquarters with the executive team, and my CEO's coach was in the room, right? My CEO, right? CEO of a Fortune 250 company. She has her coach sitting right there in the room with her. And she even referenced him a couple of times, like, hey, when I'm having a bad day, I reach out to Paul and Paul tells me this is important, this isn't important, right? And that's the CEO of a Fortune 250 company, right? So if you want to be and moving up, like that's how they think, right? And so when I was younger, I've always been very goal oriented. And back then, early in my career, my goal was to move towards becoming a VP of sales, right? Which, I have attained. But sometimes goals change too. At one point also I had the goal of becoming a CEO, right? I thought I'd become like a CEO of a startup. And, I changed that after having a taste of the GM and realized I didn't like all the other stuff. But so I looked at that and I started thinking and looking around and like, okay, what are executives doing? And executives have coaches. I found someone that was really much more of a sales coach and someone that I could leverage to help me understand not only how I perfected the craft of selling, and that's what it was early on, just get better as becoming a salesperson. But then it was someone that I could talk to that wasn't my boss, right? That wasn't a peer, right? It's like that old Saving Private Ryan line, right? Griping goes up, never down. If you remember that, right? Yeah. So it gave me someone that I could gripe to, if you will, and be like, hey man, this sucks, right? And this is pissing me off. What do I do about it? Without having to talk to my boss about that. Or even my peers, right? Because you don't want to be the negative guy on the team, but sometimes stuff sucks, right? And you want someone that you can talk about it that understands, that can provide a perspective of, hey, this is normal. But it's very much like we were just talking about from how I view my role now when I'm meeting with customers and prospects. They're looking at me to be an expert because I talk to so many other companies as so many of their peers. They don't. If I'm a CFO, I maybe talk to a few others of my peers in my silos, but they're not talking to companies like we do from a sales perspective. It was the same thing from a coach perspective. He worked with so many other executives and so many other salespeople. He knew the ending of the story, if you will, right? And he was able to help guide me and keep me centered as I went through, as we all do from time to time, the good and the bad and the indifferent.
Yeah. And I sense that some people think that that's a sign of weakness. Like even if they have a coach, they don't tell anybody. Yeah. They don't want their boss to know that, they're getting like extra help or something. I don't know. Like what's your thought on that? Is it a sign of weakness or a sign of ambition and maturity?
It's going to the therapist, a sign of weakness, right? No, right? It's motivated, self-help, right? My CEO used a term this week where she talked about being vulnerable, right? She said, I keep a Post-it note on my desk, right? Be vulnerable, right? Meaning like it's okay to be vulnerable and people actually want to see that you're vulnerable, right? Too many times as leaders, I think they keep that boss pants on all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you just got to be natural and be yourself and be like, no, man, this works and this doesn't work. And sometimes, we got to put our heads together and figure it out. Sometimes you need external help to do that. There's nothing wrong with that.
When I think about it, most of the folks I know and worked with, like, I think we all did that at some point, like, afraid to show that you don't know something or that you're vulnerable, but maybe that's where the gray hair comes in. You realize that you don't need to have all the answers. And not only is it okay to be vulnerable, it's actually an asset. It's like your CEO was probably talking about.
Exactly.
That builds trust.
Exactly.
When someone's like, someone at a senior level says, I don't have all the answers. I have a coach. This is I go to when things are bad. Like, wow, like, okay, you're a human being.
Correct.
I can better relate to you.
Correct.
Right.
It's the sign of insecurity, quite frankly, if you're not, and I think we might have talked about this. The most freeing thing in my career is that I've gotten to the point, not just from an age perspective, but from a career perspective too. I'm happy with where I am, right? So I'm not looking to like continuously climb the ladder and do more and more. If they ask me to take over a different, bigger team, that's fine. If they ask me to take over a different, smaller team, that's fine, right? I enjoy what I do, right? And that's very freeing when you're not always worried about how others perceive you. I'm just worried about, am I doing the right thing for the company? Am I doing the right thing for my team? Am I doing the right thing for myself and my own personal integrity?
Yeah, that is freeing. Just being comfortable in your own skin and not worrying about what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean you're not gonna try hard.
It doesn't mean you're not ambitious. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have those goals when I was 25, 26 years old of moving towards becoming a VP and getting that coach because I wanted to get that coach because I knew it would help me to get to where I wanted to get to. What I'm saying is that at some point in your career, when you get there, it's really freaking nice.
Well said, Matt. Matt, let's talk about like banging your head against the wall, stubbing your toe type of question. It's a painful lesson you learned in this business somewhere along the way, like maybe an aha moment, something maybe not too pleasant that helped shape who you are and how you approach your business today.
Maybe it's because we were just talking about it earlier, Matt, but I think about, I have the blip on the radar, on the resume rather. And for me, my lesson that I took away from that is sort of what I was talking about before, I used myself as the example when I was speaking, right? I didn't do the due diligence on the market. I didn't do the due diligence on the company. I didn't do the due diligence on the leadership. I was excited about getting an opportunity because it was a title, and I didn't think about the opportunity. I thought about the title, right? Yeah. And I learned this a long time ago too. The bigger team is not always the better team, right? So, the old be careful what you ask for thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Some of the most fun I had was when I was frontline, closer to the frontline leaders, right? Some of the least fun I had was when I was in that middle, right? Big teams, but in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's there's joy that you have to get out of where you are, and you have to kind of be true to yourself. Is this something that I'm going to get joy out of and enjoy doing?
Yeah. It makes it's so helpful to look at things that way. I remember one of the tipping points for me was we closed a humongous deal, biggest deal in our organization, the emo at the time, like the biggest deal in the history. And it was one of the biggest deals in the company that quarter.
Yeah.
And it was like, you wanted to celebrate and like, hug everybody, high five. Like, some people made some really awesome money. It was a great win for the team, the company, the customer. It was like done the right way, something you could share. And, I remember going to some of the other folks that we work with and they're like, oh, hey, congratulations. Is that, $67,000 deal at XYZ company coming in? It was like, that was the next question out of their mouth. I'm like, wait a minute, $40 million. Like, we're talking about 67,000. Anyway, yeah, it's be careful what you ask for because you want to be in a situation that's motivating, that's thriving, and it kind of meets the goals that you have for yourself. And like you said earlier on, goals do change.
Correct.
So,
correct. And that's okay too. I think too many times people look at like, oh, I had a goal to do this. Like I have to hit that goal. Sometimes it's okay to say, well, I need to adjust that goal and not your quota, by the way, because that's not your goal. Right. And I tell this to the team in all seriousness, right? I say this to the team too, right? Because every quarter for the QBRs, I want to see what their goals are. And I don't want to see like hit my number, right? Because the company gives you that, right? That's not your goal. That's your job, right? So don't confuse your job with what your goals are. I want to see maybe it's, hey, I want to get to President's Club. Okay, well, that's a goal, right? Maybe I want to close this many types of deals, right? This many new logos I want to get, those types of things. Okay, those are goals, right? But then from the personal standpoint too, it's, hey, I want to become a VP of sales, whatever. Maybe at some point you realize, that you didn't want that and you want to change that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with adjusting the goals on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So you're at FIS now, huge company, but for those who don't know, what does FIS do? And what are you most excited about the opportunity that you have today?
Yeah. FIS is probably the biggest company most people haven't heard of. So a lot of people have heard of SunGard, right? So it was the SunGard acquisition a few years ago that is actually the team that I helped run. So FIS is the world's largest fintech, about a $10.5 billion global fintech company. People would know us from like when you go to an ATM machine, you have the NICE, NYCE network. Mm-hmm. That's us, right? So 95% of the world's banks run through FIS's platform. So very big on the banking side and then on the corporate side.
And what attracted you there or what are you most excited about working with your team?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's so it's more about the space that I'm in at this point, right? So I've kind of carved out a niche for myself in this office of the CFO solution set, selling treasury, payments, receivables type solutions. I don't know how that happened from an English lit major from Miami, but that's what happens. It's funny how you look at these things, right? Actually,
my grandfather always said, follow the money.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened, right? I mean, it really started back in the Oracle days, right? We had Hyperion, and we start learning about Hyperion and not Power BI, what we call the business intelligence offerings, right? So you kind of started getting into it from that. And then it moved on. I went to Bottom Line Technology as a general manager there for, corporate line doing this type of stuff and just kind of snowballed, right? So I had an exit from my last company. I was chief revenue officer. at G Treasury. We sold the company, had a good exit to a PE firm out of the UK. And I had some time, right? So I took off from January 1st of this past year of 2024. And I was really trying to be selective, back to that earlier comment, right? Like I've had the blip on the radar, and on the radar, I said that twice, blip on the resume that, frankly, I didn't want to do that again. Right. And I had the luxury of some time and not having to panic about it. So I was really trying to be selective and look at the right types of opportunities. And I would have gone back to the PE world, nothing wrong with the PE world, and, do the CRO thing in the right type of the PE company. But when this opportunity came along and to work for, Fortune 250, it's a different mindset to me, right? The PE world, and again, nothing wrong with that. And I enjoyed my time there quite a bit, but it's very short term. It's very doom, boom, 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 boom. And don't get me wrong, we're very quarterly driven. We're a publicly traded company, of course, right? Very quarterly driven. But at the same time, you can also have a longer term vision of where do we really want to go and where we're heading. And when I sat down with my CRO and the other executives through the interview process, I got that first of all, comfort level from just a relationship standpoint that really matters, right? That cultural fit. So tough to pin down, dude. So tough to pin down. Everyone talks about you got to have a cultural fit. Like, how do you define that? Right. I could tell you a funny story on that one too. But right. So I felt like I had a cultural fit, and I felt like we had the vision, and I knew the space, and I knew the product, and I competed against us, for a number of years. So I kind of knew where that was. But to me, it was that cultural fit. It was the vision. It was that everyone understood that, yes, we have to hit our numbers now, but we need to build an organization for the long term. And for me, and where I am in my career, ideally 8-9 years, right, to go, I'd love to be at a company that I could grow with and I can really help make an impact at the bottom line. And that to me, it was a cultural fit and it was an organizational fit across the board.
No, again, thanks for sharing that. So Matt, this is a Coach2Scale podcast. We talk about coaching. We bring guests on who give a crap about coaching and developing people and achieving success through others. Usually people who care about that, people who invest their own money in coaches, have had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who's somebody in your past whose coaching has had an impact on you?
Present company excluded. That'd be you, Matt. The
positive.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I in all seriousness, I did learn a lot working for you, right? I learned a lot about, paying attention to all the details, right? Going through pipeline and looking at all of the deals in the pipeline, not just cherry picking the top ones, right? So, in your credit, I really did learn, and I still to this day still look at that, and I still instill that in my teams, right? That rigor and that process matters so much, right? But aside from the accolades for yourself, the reality is, Matt, I probably learned more about my management style and leadership style from observing what not to do than what to do, right? And it's because it's really tough when you work with someone that things just kind of work and they're smooth and you don't notice, right? It's Steph Curry's 3-point shot, right? It's just smooth and it's seamless, right? I can't freaking do that. I could sit with Curry for a fucking year and have him show me exactly what he does day in and day out. I could never do that. So sometimes you can't learn by watching what's really good. You sometimes learn by what's not going well. I probably should not do that, right? So there's a lot of examples we don't have to get into on that front. But
criticizing somebody for wearing brown shoes. You don't do that. I want to have a podcast. I want to write a book. People talk about writing books. If I write a book, it's about those stories, the stories that hopefully people will laugh and be like, "Oh my God, that really happened."
It does, man. Yeah, I mean, making people cry in a QBR, right? It's that stop the chump mentality that I just abhor, right? Don't get me wrong, we're going to have tough conversations. We'll have tough conversations. Those are going to be one-on-one, right? Yeah. Those aren't going to be in group settings, right? I don't play poker for a reason. You're going to know when I'm pissed, right?
Yeah. I don't praise in public, chastise in private.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's all well and good, right? I mean, again, I say this to the team all the time. It's not personal, it's just business, right? And we need to be objective with how we look at our business, right? Good, bad, and indifferent, right?
Matt the Godfather.
Put ourselves on the back for every little win. But we don't need to beat ourselves up for every little loss either. We need to win for the good. We need to learn from the bad, right?
Amen to that. Last question here. Coaching, on the topic of coaching, who's your favorite coach? A name a lot of people would know.
Missoula right now, man. And
What do you like about him?
so for those Joe Missoula, the head coach of the Celtics. So he came in at a really tough time, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So yeah,
What was the coach's name? I should know this, but that coach was
solid, right? I'm forgetting right off the top of my head too. So anyhow, right, solid coach for the Celtics, took him to the finals, right? Celtics had a great team. He had some HR related issues.
You can't fraternize with the young ladies on his staff,
Danny Ainge,
yeah, okay.
Danny Ainge,
Frowned upon.
Daughter.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the boss is his family. Yeah, that's frowned upon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, no matter where you are in life, careful the HR issues, I guess, would be the lesson to that one. So anyhow, he gets exited. Missoula comes in, I don't know, was he like 34 years old? Dude had never coached anything beyond like as a head coach in like the G League, right? Like no real serious coaching chops. It came in that first year. If you remember that first year in the finals, he wasn't calling timeouts. Everyone's like, dude, call a timeout. What are you doing? He had this thing like, I'm not going to call timeouts. I'm going to let the players figure it out and all this stuff, right? It didn't work. And they got bounced, right? And they had a team that frankly should have probably won it that year too. And then he came back that next year and he learned from all that. When if you watched his coaching style, right, especially in last year's playoffs, he really had a good handle on the team. Like he called the timeouts when they needed to call the timeouts, right? He was making sure that he's huddling with the team. When they were going through tough patches, he was never beating anyone up. And you hear him he's great on press conferences, by the way.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah.
And he comes out with these freaking things like, oh, it's like a lion has to get hungry and then the hungry lion has to eat. And if the lion's full all the time, it's not going to eat. So they lost. And that's a great thing because now they're hungry and they're going to go back and eat, right? But he just has this, is not just motivational, right? He's in it to support his team, but he learned, right? He learned from what did and didn't work. And to me, yeah, that's why I love listening to him, and I think he's great. He's also a neighbor of mine too. So,
all right. NBA Finals this year, who's going to be in it?
Celtics. Who else? I don't know. Good question. I don't know right now.
The media, ESPN was on there this morning talking Celtics Lakers.
I was just going to say I wasn't going to call the Lakers thing, but
yeah, it'd be fun.
It'd be fun. LeBron is just it's just super.
Better than OKC Cleveland, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Matt, awesome conversation. Really had a lot of fun with this. Thanks for investing your time.
Yeah, of course, man. Always a pleasure talking to you.
All right. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing that. Let us know you're out there. Engage with us online. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. But most importantly, let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. Our goal is to bring guests and content to you that helps you do that hard job that you do every day a little bit, make that job a little bit easier. So thanks for watching. See you next time. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.